Okay, let's go for a demonstration of the OutSystems platform. And before I actually start showing you real life working applications and things being changed, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of how things work technically in the OutSystems platform. Okay. Now, always in any system, or at least the vast majority of systems that you are creating with the OutSystems platform, you will be connecting into your existing core systems. Okay. That could be through connecting into existing databases. That could be into connecting into enterprise systems such as SAP, Salesforce, others, connecting through SOAP APIs, REST APIs, or to a number of cloud services that might be available in the cloud. Okay, that's always the first step. Now, on top of that, you're going to build your OutSystems application by visually designing every single layer of your application. So you're going to design the data layer visually, you're going to design the business process, the workflow layer visually, you're going to design the logic, the algorithms visually, and you're going to design the user interface, the screens of your applications visually. And we're going to see all that in the demonstration in a few seconds. Okay. Now, this application that you design visually, at some point in time, you actually have to deploy that into your servers. Okay. And when you are deploying this into your servers, what's actually happening is that we're taking this visual model that was created with the OutSystems platform, and we are transforming that into a standard Java or a standard .NET application through the deployment process. Okay. Also, you have built-in validation of consistency in the applications. There's a lot of governance aspects into this deployment process, and we're going to see all that in a few seconds. Okay. When you have that application deployed, what you actually have running is a standard web application running in a standard stack with HTML5, JavaScript, CSS3, .NET or Java on the server side, Oracle or SQL databases, all standard technology that's running for your users to access, and which are by default responsive applications. So applications that will behave well both in a desktop form factor, but also in a tablet or mobile smartphone form factor. Okay, and you can even encapsulate those within a hybrid container that is provided by OutSystems called OutSystems Now, so that you can access across all the different form factors, all the different operating systems, the native functionality of Android, of iOS, of Windows Phone, like taking pictures, using GPS, using barcode scanners, etc. Now, because building that first version of the application is not the end of it, actually being able to capture the feedback from your users, actually being able to monitor the runtime performance of your applications, and being able to change that very quickly, that's also very important, and that's something that's built into the platform. Okay, so the platform is has a number of functionality both on the development side and on the operations side to enable you to continuously iterate with your application and keep on delivering value to your business users over time as new needs arise. Now, to actually make this a bit more concrete, let me show you my screen and actually show you a sample OutSystems application for you to see what can be the look and feel, and how can an application behave within an OutSystems context. Okay, and this one is just an example. In this specific scenario, we're talking about an order management application that starts with a process in Salesforce that goes through a number of steps by taking an opportunity from Salesforce all the way for it to become a properly defined order, which can be inserted into SAP for billing, accounting, all the ERP functionality. Okay. Now, as you can see, this application is an example that has, well, my dashboard for a salesperson in this application. I can take a look at my orders, my opportunities, a bit of information on the products and my leaderboard for the application. You can see that it's behaving equally well in a smartphone form factor with different functionality across that really adapts to the form factor of each of the devices. Because I am in that hybrid setting that I described earlier, I can do things such as scanning a barcode. That's actually going to let me search for a barcode in my product catalog. So I really have this nice responsive hybrid functionality within my application. Okay. Now the typical process in this specific application, and as I mentioned, this is just an example. The typical scenario here would be for me to start with an opportunity that was brought in from Salesforce, just adding in some additional details such as when do I have to deliver that order, like saying which are the specific products here. In this case we want, I don't know, some notebook and network cable. And when I'm configuring this order, the really important aspect for you to take attention is that everything that I've done, everything that I'm showing you, it's implemented using visual functionality that's implemented in a fully visual way in OutSystems. Okay, so there was no need for hand coding for any of the things that I'm showing you now. Okay. Now let me just submit this for approval. And now this is going to go through a number of steps, of approval steps, which for the matter I'm not really going to follow because, like I mentioned before, it's not really about the application. It's about showing you an example of something which is working with OutSystems and how you can then change it and work on it using the OutSystems technology. Okay. Now before I close the application, I just want to show you something which is built into every application that you do in OutSystems that you can enable or disable, but which is typically enabled in your quality assurance testing environments, which is the ability for me to provide feedback in any application directly. So if I get into this product detail and I want to be able to specify what is the supplier here, what I can do is that I can just touch this feedback button here. By touching it, it's going to teach me how do I give feedback. The first time that I get here, I can actually draw on screen, draw on glass, and say, well, I want to have the ability to specify the supplier. I can actually record my voice saying, I want the supplier here, and I can send that feedback for IT to then look at it, evaluate whether it should be implemented or not, and if it should be implemented, actually change that. Okay, and this, like I mentioned, is something that's built into every application that you can use in your tablets, in your phones, and in your desktops if you have it enabled. Okay. Now, this feedback that I have submitted, that actually became available in a back office in the OutSystems platform, which is this one. Okay, let me just log in here again. So in here I have the feedback, old feedback that was provided for the order management application, which is the one that we're working on, and you can see that I have all the meta information about what was the screen resolution, which were the operating systems, which was the screen, the applications that were used. Okay, so if any issues are coming up, I can really track down the details on why these are occurring. Okay, let me go into the details of the one that I just created. You can see that I have all the information regarding, well, exactly what the user was seeing, what did he draw on screen. I can listen to the message that was provided by the user. I want the supplier here. And I can actually go now and change the screen in the application. Okay, so if I go into the development tool of OutSystems, and what you're seeing now is the development tool in which your developers are going to be 99% of their time with OutSystems. you can see, you can go into the screen that we were looking at and actually realize what is it that I need to change here. Okay. Now, before I make any change, let me just give you an overview of the development tool that your developers are going to use, because this is where you're going to build all the different layers of your applications. Okay, so this is where you're going to build the data layer with the different database tables that you design here in OutSystems, and that are going to be mapped automatically into standard database tables in your Oracle server or your SQL server or your MySQL. Okay. In addition to tables that you design using OutSystems, you can also integrate into existing tables and use them in the same way, in the same visual way as you would use data that's coming from tables that were designed in OutSystems. You have here the logic side, where you can see, in this case, an algorithm that's doing Salesforce synchronization. You can see how easy it is to read. It's a lot more high level, and it's a lot more compact, and it's definitely a lot more visual than if you were programming in traditional Java or .NET. Okay, you can probably read this even if you don't know the OutSystems development language yet. So you can see we're making a couple of API calls to Salesforce. Here we are iterating over the data. We are making a few queries into my database. The queries, as you can see, they're also visual. They specify the data sources. I get a preview of the data as I do that. Here I'm writing some data into the database. Here I have basically an if that's deciding the flow of the logic. So you can see this is a lot more high level than if you were programming in .NET or Java or any other handwritten technology. And this gives you not only a much faster implementation time, but even more important, when you actually have to make a change into existing code that was developed by someone else in your team or by yourself a long time ago, you can actually read this code and understand this code a lot faster than if you were actually going to read 10,000 lines of code or 100,000 lines of code before you even understand what is being done, which is obviously a prerequisite for you to change it. Now, if you go into the user interface, well, you can see what we were seeing just before. There's this dashboard screen that we had as the main page. There's the product detail screen that we actually have to change. If you look, you can even see how you can preview the different form factors by just changing here. Okay, and you can actually reach any kind of detail, complexity, look and feel that you want within the screen, so you're not limited in any way by doing this in OutSystems. And finally, you have the workflows, the business process layer that you design in here, okay, where you design your different sub-processes, decisions, human activities, automatic activities, etc. Okay. Now let's actually make that change that was being requested by our users. Okay, and making that change is actually going to start not by changing the screen yet, but by first changing our data model. Okay, that means that I'm going to go into my data layer. You can see right now that in the products table I don't have any information about the supplier. Okay, I actually have here a table from a third-party system, a third-party application, which is the supplier table, and I can actually just say, well, I want to reference that table here, and I specifically want to reference this table from the product table. So I want to create a new field in product that tells me what is the supplier. I can do that by just dragging this into the product, and as in many other places in the platform, I have an accelerator that's going to create a new field, a new supplier field for me. It's going to specify what is the specific data type, and when I publish this is actually going to automatically create a new foreign key from the product table into the supplier table. It's going to create this new field with the proper data type, etc. Okay. Now I don't have to change anything in the logic because it's all going to be automatic here, but I actually have to change my screen. Okay, and changing my screen is actually as easy as taking in the new field here, dragging that onto my page, dropping that, and that's going to automatically create a label, and it's going to create a drop down that's going to give me the suppliers which are available. Okay, of course, I can fine tune this if this hasn't created exactly what I want. In this case, I want to adjust the size of the label slightly here, and I want to adjust the size of the supplier field here, and that's it. Okay, if you actually look in detail into the page, you can see there's a bit of code behind that's going to run before the page is loaded, where I'm making a query to get the product details. This query is actually going to be automatically changed to cope with the fact that I have a new field in the database that is being shown on the screen. And if you look at the save logic, I also have a bit of logic that writes data onto the database, and again, this is going to be automatically changed to cope with this new field that I now have on screen. Now, just to make this a bit more interesting, let me imagine that my users actually asked to have more detail about the suppliers. Okay, so they want to know all the details about the suppliers. Okay, and to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an accelerator in the platform that allows me to just take any table, even a table from a third-party system that I'm integrating to, and just drag that table into my screen flow and automatically create with that a new supplier listing page. Okay, if I do that again, I'm going to create a new supplier detail page automatically. Okay, if I look at the details, you can see that this supplier listing page already has searching capabilities, sorting capabilities, paging. So it has all the default stuff that I want in a page, but then I can change it. Okay, so if, for example, I realize a fax is outdated, I can just remove that fax from here. I can say instead I want to have maybe the contact name, which might be more relevant if I call this person, and that's very, very easy to change. If I go into my supplier detail page, you can see I have all the detail that I might want to change. But if I want to add, for example, a Google map, by just reusing user interface that someone else created, I can just say, well, I want to drag here, I want to add here an address map that someone else created, a block here, then I want to put that in here. Okay, and with that I have my map in a supplier detail page, and that means I'm actually customizing this with some custom additional functionality that I want. Okay. Now, one thing which is very important, I'm not sure if you noticed, but this button changed from green into red. Okay, and that's actually telling me that I have something in my page, in my application, which is not consistent. Okay, if I touch this, this is going to tell me that is the address, because I'm missing the mandatory parameter address for this block of user interface. That's going to be very easy to solve. I just have to say I want to pass along the address. Let me also make it a bit prettier here with a container around it. But this validation checking is actually very, very powerful, and it's running across every single layer of my application. Okay, we have this true change mechanism that is continuously validating for consistency across my application. Okay, if I, for example, change something very structural by removing from the order who is the guy in charge of the order, that's going to break all sorts of stuff. Okay, if I look at the errors that I get here, I'm going to get errors within data queries. I'm going to get for sure errors within well, lots of data queries are broken here. I'm going to get for sure at some point, well, errors in logic, for example. Okay, like I'm going to get errors in the user interface. If I look at the process, you can see also get errors in the process. So basically what this means is that it's virtually impossible for me to change something in one of the application layers, and that leading to an inconsistency within a different application layer. Okay, this is actually running across not only a specific application, but this is running across all my different OutSystems applications. Okay, and that means that it's very, very, very hard for me to move something into production and to get a situation where I have, for example, a database that's inconsistent with the application because someone forgot to run an update script, for example. Okay, so this greatly reduces the human error factor, and this greatly reduces the test cycles that you have to do for ensuring the total consistency and correctness of your applications. Now, in this case, I'm going to undo this change, and I'm actually gonna publish these changes into my development server. Okay, so by pressing this button here, I'm telling the development tool that it should now actually take this visual model that I just created, that I just changed, and actually send that into version control so that I always keep track of everything that has been done within the application over time. So that's being sent into the server. Then I'm taking in this visual model and I'm generating standard Java or .NET code, and then I'm compiling that code, of course, and I'm actually creating also the SQL scripts which are needed to change the database so that it reflects the changes that I've done in my data model. And finally, it actually deploys this application into my front-end servers. This could be in .NET, Internet Information Services, like in this example, but if we're in a Java scenario, that could be JBoss, Wildfly, WebLogic, okay? And it's also going to update the database by running the scripts that were generated in the previous step, okay? And by following all these steps, I now have a running OutSystems application, a running standard web application with the changes that I've made, okay? If I go back into the application, we can go into the detail of the product catalog. You can see that I now have the supplier input available. I can select the product, I can save that. If I go back in here, I actually have this working. If I go into the suppliers, you can see that I do have new supplier functionality. I can search for something, I can open it, I have my map working, I can actually change this and save it, and it's going to be working, okay? And in fact, if I show you this on my phone, you can see that I also have the same supplier pages that we created working just as well in a mobile form factor with no manual effort on my side to get this, okay? So it's working fine, including the detail page, including the map that we've added. Everything is working just fine in my mobile phone. Now, up until now, I've basically shown you development capabilities, okay? I also want to show you the operations functionality of the OutSystems platform, okay? And I'm going to give you a highlight of that by going into Lifetime. Lifetime is the main operations console of the OutSystems platform, and this is where you get to see all your different details, all your different environments with the details on its status, okay? In this case, I'm running in a cloud environment on top of .NET. I could be running on Java, I could be running on an on-premises configuration. I could be running even in a hybrid configuration where I have a mix of cloud environments and on-premises environments. And well, in this case I only have two environments because this is a demonstration environment, but the typical scenarios that you actually have here, 3 or 4 environments depending on your specific operations rules, okay? Now, one of the things that I can do here is actually go into the applications detail and see all the different applications that I have, the versions that I have in each of my environments. And I can do things such as going into a specific application or a set of applications. Okay, in this case you can see we've changed order management here. And I can go into here and I can say, well, I want to deploy order management, the new version, into my production environment. So I can just touch this, and this is gonna tell me, well, do you want to select any other application? Because I could be running this not for one but for 10 or 100 different applications. I can validate this, and when I touch this button, this is actually going to check if in production this could create any inconsistency in my production applications. Okay, because as I can have dependencies across applications, I need to make sure that this deployment is not going to break anything in production. Okay, and if I have green light, it means I can go forward. Okay, everything is fine, and I can actually deploy this. And actually, before I touch this deploy button, I just want to highlight something, which is, depending on your operations requirements, your specific rules, you may have this button available or not for specific rules. Okay, so a very common scenario within our more sophisticated customers is that they have isolated operations teams, which would mean that maybe the development team would get to use the save deployment plan and nodes, and then you would get someone else from the operations team actually being able at a different time to touch this button based on a saved plan by the development team. Okay, so assuming I'm now an operations guy, I would touch this button, I would confirm that everything was according to what was expected, and I'm going to deploy it. Okay, and now this full process is completely automated. It goes end to end up until the last step, and when it gets into the last step, I have a running production application available for my users with no downtime and perfectly working for them to use. Okay, even in mobile. Now I'm not going to wait for it to finish, because I want to show you some of the analytics, built-in analytics functionality of the OutSystems platform. Okay? And specifically, one of the things which I wanted to highlight is that all the analytics that you're going to see now, they are available for every OutSystems application. Okay? So any application that your developers build, without them having to do any specific development effort to get this, has in a built-in way monitoring both in error perspective, but also, and very importantly, in the performance perspective. Okay, which is what we're seeing now. Okay, and as you can see, we're tracking down how performance is evolving over time. We're tracking down which requests are slow and fast. We're tracking down which things specifically are getting worse, so that you can see if there are specific screens, specific applications that you have to look into. You have the ability to drill down by application, by screen. You can actually break this down by client-side time. So you can see, for example, which are the operating systems with issues, with browsers with issues. You can see what's being spent on the network. You can even see, if you realize that something is wrong on the server side, you can see exactly what is wrong on the server side. So you can see if this is specific queries which are being very slow. You can see if it's a call to a third-party web service, for example, which is being too slow. So what this means is that when you get some complaint by a user, or you proactively detect that something is getting slower by looking at these high-level charts, you can actually drill down layer by layer, until you realize and you find out exactly what is wrong in your application, and you're actually able to pinpoint those issues and solve those issues very, very quickly. Okay, and that means that you have productivity not only in the development side that we saw in the beginning, but this also means that you have a lot of productivity in the deployment part. You also have a lot of productivity in the runtime operations and change component of your applications. Okay, and what I tried to show you in this demonstration is how in different aspects of your application lifecycle, from development to deployment to runtime operations, we really aim to increase your productivity as much as possible, so you can really get your business users happy and get them having an outstanding life, and also improving the life of IT by improving the productivity across all of these steps. Thank you for listening to this demo.